As I'm sure you've seen by now, an Israeli soldier in the southern part of Lebanon, in a Christian village, took a sledgehammer and smashed it on a crucified statue of Jesus. I've seen a lot of people address this situation, but what I haven't seen is people going to the why. Why would an Israeli soldier take a sledgehammer and smash a statue of Jesus for what seemed to be no apparent reason other than he just wanted to do it? I believe there's a few reasons for this. The first, we need to look at the actual demographic of Israel itself. Israel overall is a very secular nation. It believes in a higher power, not necessarily God itself, but moving past that, roughly 10% of the population, they are what would be considered, I guess, extreme Orthodox, which is where, based on what I've seen, they are incredibly discriminatory against people who aren't, I guess, Jewish enough or they're Christian, stuff like that. You can watch videos on like Al Jazeera where these people, these Christians, they were carrying like a cross, and these people, they just start spitting on the ground next to them. And it wasn't just the thing that concerned me is it wasn't just the adults. It was their children as well spitting at them, meaning to me, this is a learned behavior that is being passed down generation to generation to spread this hatred, and that's just not okay with me. And what I'm trying to get, I'm not, first of all, I'm not trying to say that all Jews, they all hate Christians and they want to destroy them. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, I believe the reason for this Israeli soldier to take that sledgehammer and smash the statue of Jesus is because I believe he falls into that category, which accounts for roughly 5 to 10% of the population. And I believe that is potentially one of the reasons he did this. The other is that Israel has been going through an extremely far right approach as of late, and that's why, for example, there's this organization in Israel that accounts for like attacks on Christians by the Jewish people in Israel, and I think it was roughly 60 something last year, I believe. And the reason I bring this up is because, and even in the Senate, like I looked at Senate.gov for the US, and the US also has reports of this happening in Israel. But the thing I find concerning about this is that while these assaults may happen or they're getting spit on, that their religion's being desecrated for no other apparent reason, there just seems to be pure hatred towards it, is that while these events are recorded by like the police or broken up by the civilians, which I think is just horrible that civilians need to go and help Christians or people expressing their faith in people consider Israel to be the only democracy in the Middle East, and yet they're being heavily discriminated against. Granted, I give total props to the people who help those that are facing that discrimination. But what I'm trying to get at is that while these reports have been documented, nothing seems to really be done about it. Like the government itself states, don't do that. Don't do that. That's so terrible. Don't attack Christians like that. But no one's ever prosecuted. Like the cops, like they mark it down that this incident happened on so and so date, but people just go on with their lives. And I think that's the other issue in this, that this extremism or this prejudice, this hatred towards Christians is not being addressed in the country of Israel. And if you proclaim yourself to allow freedom of thought, freedom of religion, you can't allow these hate crimes to persist. Like, you can't just document them and say, oh, well, this happened on so and so day. Moving on, because you don't stop the problem. You have to directly do something. There has to be direct consequences for this to stop. And speaking of this, going back to the Jesus statue, the Israeli soldier, if I remember correctly, it was according to the Times of Israel, stated that he was put in jail for 30 days and he is no longer allowed to be active in the military, which I think is one in and of itself. I don't think the punishment really does anything to me. It feels kind of like a slap on the wrist. Granted, I think the military thing, I think that is a very good thing, but it made me start questioning, would this soldier still be put in jail and relieved of military duty if this picture was not released to the general public? Now, I'm not trying to start conspiracy theories or anything, but it just made me think that the main reason that this potentially even happened, considering what I was just talking about previously, is that there was extreme backlash, not just from Israeli citizens, but from Christians around the world, Lebanese Christians, which, if you were not aware, holds the highest percentage of Christians in the Middle East, roughly accounting for, I believe, 33% of the country. And if I remember correctly, since there's the three major religions, they all have to, there has to be one Christian leader, one Sunni leader, and one Shiite leader, basically to represent the three major religions in that country. And while I believe it is very important that this person has been received some kind of punishment based on that previous account where it was just recorded that something happened on so and so date, that a hate crime happened on whatever date, it made me think, going back to that, would they just have documented that he just smashed the statue of Jesus, just reported that down and said, oh, okay, moving on, let's just continue? Because to me, it seemed like the only reason this happened, that he even got this uh, penalty, is because there was backlash throughout the Christian world. But the problem is, and this is in a foreign country, this isn't in Israel, that it's just, you can't allow something like this to happen. Let me rephrase that. Something like this doesn't happen for no reason. There's got to be reasons why this person would do this. Now, yes, you could say it's because of the small percentage of extremists in Israel. But something I think that needs to be considered is that that population is starting to grow. And that's very concerning. Not just because they're very hostile towards Christians and other Jewish people that they don't consider Jewish enough, I guess. What does that even mean? Is that what is causing this kind of extremism in Israel? In fact, it's so bad that, the cross we use for like addition, it's so bad that in some like really religious parts of Israel, they use like an upside down T because it's too much like the Christian cross. And from what I understand, the reason why they're so extreme in their beliefs is partially because of the persecution of Jews in the olden days, such as, I believe it was during the Black Death, during the 1300s. One of the things that Christians blame the plague on, because this was before modern science, so a lot of suspicions, a lot of witchcraft beliefs, stuff like that. And one of their reasons was it was the Jewish people. They're using witchcraft or something, and that's why we're all dying and we're getting sick. So they executed or tortured a lot of Jewish people. And the problem is, some of the the extremists, they take that to heart. That what happened in the past, I suppose you could say they're still holding on to that. Some of that vengeance, because Jewish people have always been, for a long time now, the minority in countries. They weren't the big dogs. They weren't the ones who can make the rules, shape the society, etc. But now that they're in a position where they are the majority by a good amount, I think Christians only account for like 1% of Israel in total, and that doesn't include like the Palestinian territories or whatnot. And now that they have this majority, they feel like this is their way to, I suppose, get revenge, get even with them for all those years of persecution. But let me know what you think. I always respond to all my comments as best I can. I may not always be good at it, but I do try. Thank you for listening.